All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. Welcome to my favorite Friday of the week, the only Friday of the week, and that is Masterclass Friday. So, welcome for those of you who are new. Welcome for those of you who are coming back. And also, thank you if you're watching the replay. Replay numbers matter to me, and I like replay numbers just as much as I like live numbers. So, for those of you who are first timers, if this is your first time watching the Masterclass Fridays, know that you have a full day of masterclasses. The number one question we get is if I can't stay, if I can't watch it live, will it be available for a replay? Yes. Unless something horribly goes wrong, they're always available for replay. Yeah, my camera's a bit fuzzy. That's a long story. Sorry about that. Uh, I can't fix it right now. it's it's a focus thing. Anyway, for those of you who are, well, maybe I can. Hang on one second. Let me try one thing. Let me see if that will fix it. If I can even get to the button. All right. That's the best I can do with one hand staying in front of the camera. Anyway, for those of you who are watching this somewhere else, you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, great. Thanks for hanging out and watching us from other places. If that's the case, you can stay where you are and watch it, but if you really want to participate in the chat, head over to b.net/Adobe Live. That's where the main chat will be happening, and that's where we'll be taking, that's where I'll be paying attention to the bulk of the questions. Now, that doesn't mean I can't see the questions or see the people on the other chats. It just means I can't pay attention to both windows and demo at the same time. So I do see Corinna over there on YouTube from Kansas. Welcome. Hi. But like I said, I won't always be able to look at the other window. So I'll pay attention to the main window. If I see something in the other window, I'll pay attention to it too. But if not, head over to b.net/Adobe Live. All right, so with that said, this is Masterclass Friday. The Masterclasses are available for replay. If you want to see video, graphic design, digital painting, UI, UX design, hang out for the rest of the day to see my colleagues demoing their various strengths and their topics of the day. So today, my topic is going to be 10 bad habits that Lightroom users have, and more importantly, how to break them or how to get around them, or at least call them out so you know it's a bad habit, and maybe you will at some point make an adjustment so that you're not having that bad habit. I'm going to make one more adjustment here to the stream. Just hang on one second. I've got a Photoshop document up in the window here. Just going to hit save on that. We're not doing Photoshop today, but I need to fix this one thing. Hang on. It is fixed. And now let's go over here. I know you can't see what I'm doing. You're not supposed to. I am fixing something behind the scenes. Let's add that to the media encoder queue. And let's see if that comes up. Okay. Yep, and it did. Great. Let's go ahead and render that out. I am rendering my lower third on the fly, something I didn't get a chance to do before the stream started. And boom, it did it. Okay, great. All right, I can quit out of that, save that. And we're back. We're back to you now. Okay, let's head over to, let me do one thing first. Let's head over to Lightroom so I can start with the bad habits. One bad habit is not having your lower third ready before the stream. That's a bad habit that, well, it's not a habit. It's a one-time thing. I don't usually do this, but it's going to bug me unless I do it. So bear with me just for another second. There it is. Lower thirds. There's the one from today. It's in there. And it's up. It's live. Okay. 10 bad habits Lightroom users have. Okay, now I can go on with my day. All right, so let's move on. Yep, new title. Is it 11 bad? Yeah, 11 bad habits. That's not a Lightroom user thing though. All right, let's switch over. Let's get you guys going. Okay, bad habit number 1, and this is probably the biggest bad habit for Lightroom Classic users, and that is doing stuff outside of Lightroom. Not because you're trying to do something bad. It's just because that's the way you've been doing things your whole computer life. Like if you need to change the name of a file, you go into the operating system and change the name of a file. You need to move something to a different drive, you go to plug the drive in and move it to a different drive. You've been doing that stuff outside of any program since day one because that's what the operating system is for. However, since Lightroom depends on knowing where things are, knowing what things are called, knowing what drive things are on, Lightroom Classic that is, the minute you go do stuff behind its back, is my joke that I always say, the minute you start working behind its back, it doesn't know anymore what it used to know. In other words, you went behind its back and changed something. It doesn't know you did that. And so the next time you launch Lightroom, you've got a mess on your hand because you've spent time in the operating system moving folders, changing the name, getting rid of stuff to make room, so forth and so on. So then when you come back to Lightroom, Lightroom's saying, I don't know where that stuff is. I don't know where those images are. I don't know where that folder is anymore. And you end up with all these exclamation points and error warnings, and you can't use your images because you went and did all that in the operating system. So the first bad habit to break is when you want to make changes, because obviously you do need to move files from time to time to a different drive. You may want to rename things. You may want to clear space off a hard drive and get rid of some photos and move them to another drive or whatever. Do it all in Lightroom. Like, I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm just saying don't do them behind Lightroom's back. Don't do them in the operating system. If you need to do those things, have at it, but have at it in Lightroom. So let me give you an example. I've got some images here. If I grab the right mouse, there we go. I've got some images here. And I got this image called APC 417 HDR. Okay, there it is, APC 417 HDR. And I don't like that name. That name doesn't mean anything to me. It's the name that came off the camera. I don't like that name, and I'm gonna go change it. But I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna show it in the Finder. And there it is in the other window. There it is, APC 417 HDR. I don't like that. I like cloudy day number 1. There, I've changed it. Now, the problem is, and it is if I scroll down and go find cloudy day number 1, there it is, cloudy day number 1. I've changed it. But now if I go back to Lightroom, Lightroom's gonna give me this. It's gonna say, hey, not only do I not know where the original is, I don't know where the virtual copy, which is based on the original, is anymore. And yes, you could click this exclamation point after you realize, oh yeah, that's right, I did change that name in the operating system. And you could go find it and relink it to the new name, which is the same photo anyway. So let's go do that. Let's go click that exclamation point. It's gonna say, hey, do you wanna locate that photo? Sure. Well, where is it? So then you'd have to spend time knowing where it is, by the way. So, oh yeah, there it is. So once I point to where it is and find it and select it, and then it's going to say, are you sure? Yep, I want to confirm it. Yep, okay. Now Lightroom's reflecting the newly relinked image with the new name. And that fixed the original and it fixed the virtual copy. Yay. But that was a lot of work that was just unnecessary. Because if I really wanted to just change the name of it, I could do that here. And I don't have to worry about finding it in the operating system, changing the name, then coming back to Lightroom and fixing the link. Why that's 3 steps at minimum when you could do it all in one. So if I don't like the names of these photos, let's grab these 2. Then what I can do is just rename them here. So for example, I could say photo I believe it's under photos, either under photo or library. Library, rename photos. Cloudy day. Now we already used number 1, so let's use 2. Cloudy day number 2, and click OK, and it will name it 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 500, or how many ever you've named, how many ever photos you had. So now there's no exclamation point. There's no need to go to the operating system and fix it. And a lot of people don't realize, because we always teach you that when you do things inside of Lightroom Classic, most of the time it's only affecting what's in your catalog. Like if you go retouch a photo, it's not really permanently changing the images on the hard drive. So if you go to the hard drive, the images would be the originals. However, file changes are happening in the operating system. Moving images, renaming images, deleting images, they really do rename, move, and delete the originals. So that's the exception. Editing a photo, putting in a collection, changing the color of it, making virtual copies, snapshots, all that stuff happens in the catalog because it's non-destructive. It's stuff you can undo. When you're making physical changes to the location, name, and literally deleting photos, you are literally doing those 3 things. So if I were to now click on this one photo that I called number 2, and I were to go and find it in the operating system, it is definitely renamed in the operating system. There's number 2, there's number 3. So those did get renamed for real in the operating system. So if that's what I wanted to accomplish, my point and bad habit, biggest bad habit of the 10 is do it here. Don't go do it in the operating system. It will happen in the operating system anyway, and therefore there's no need to do it in the operating system, because then you just have to come back to Lightroom and fix it. All right. So Sandy, I did catch your comment. Sandy says, I do my edits first, then when I export them, I select the folder and then rename them. Okay, well that's fine, because you're renaming the ones that aren't in Lightroom anymore. It's the ones you exported. I'm going to talk about something that may even prevent you from needing to do it that way. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, because you're now renaming the ones that aren't in Lightroom, and that's fine. But what I'm talking about are the ones that are still in your catalog. Okay, so bad habit number 1, stop doing stuff behind Lightroom's back. Now, for example, where are these photos in Lightroom, meaning what folder are they in? So for example, if I were to now right click on this and say go to the folder. So we first did show in Finder or show in Windows Explorer. Now we're going to do go to the folder in the library. In other words, show me where it physically is, where it physically lives. We already saw the folder on the operating system, but show it to me in Lightroom. So if I go to that folder, there it is. It's in a folder called Demo. And if I were to now say, you know what, I don't want this in Demo anymore. I want this on a different drive. It's taking up room. I can go find my server, for example, which is a different drive. And I could say, take this cloudy day number 1 and drag it to a different drive. So when I drag it to a different drive, Terry White Photography on a different drive, it's physically moving it. The status bar came up for a second and it physically moved it. So that means in the operating system, number 1, if we were to go find number 2 and number 3 again, let's go find number 2, and we were to show it in the operating system. Number 1 isn't here anymore because we moved it to a different drive. So it moved it in the operating system too, because file renaming, moving, and deleting happens in real life, happens in the operating system. So there's no reason for me to copy files, move files in the operating system once they're in Lightroom, because I can do all of that in Lightroom. Now, if you do all that before you get to Lightroom, have at it. If you want to take your memory card, plug it in the computer, copy the images off the memory card to a specific drive, make a new folder, all that stuff, great. Do all of that in the operating system first. then when you import them into Lightroom, they're where they're supposed to be. But once you import them into Lightroom, stop doing it in the operating system. Once they're here, do it here. If they're not here yet, or they're exported as I forgot your name already, Sandy said, as once they're exported and not in Lightroom anymore, have at it. But if they're in the Lightroom catalog, do it all in the Lightroom catalog. Before, doesn't matter. After, doesn't matter. While they're here, do it here. Okay, when you make a virtual copy, does that put it in the collection? That's where I was seeing them, and also them in Terry's library. Virtual copies exist in the folder. If you happen to make it while you're in a collection, sure, it'll be in the collection too. But it's going to be next to the image wherever the image is. So that's why you're still seeing the virtual copies, even though I'm in the folder. So if I were to go to a collection, make a virtual copy, it's going to be in the collection, but it's also going to be in the folder because it's just a virtual copy that exists in the catalog. Now that virtual copy does not exist in the operating system. That's a Lightroom feature. That does not exist. That does not take up any hard drive space. Okay. Italy is the perfect place for your photo. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. All right, so let's go back to let's twirl this up so we're not scrolling forever. Let's go back to where we were. If I can remember where we were. Let's go back to where we were. We were not there. Here, let me just undo. So I'm going to take my view back. I can't remember which collection I was in. It doesn't matter. We'll just pick one. I think I was in this one anyway. Yep, I was in this one. Okay. All right, so now we're here. That was number one. Stop doing things behind Lightroom's back. Number two, let me go to my notes. This was just brought up a second ago. Bad habit number two, not using collections. I guess that's the best way to put it. I was going to say doing everything in folders, but that's kind of the same thing. Some things you need to do in folders, but other things, as far as organization, should be happening in collections. So what's the difference? If I go to a folder, here we can go back to that. Okay, first of all, let's mark this one so I know which one it was. I'm going to add a color. Let's make this one red today. All right, so I made that one red so I can remember which one I can get back to. Now let's go to the folder that this one's in. Let's right click on this and say go to folder and library. Back where we were. Okay, so we're, oh, hang on, hold on. That's not the one I want. Sorry, that was my mistake because I used the one I moved. Let's go back to the collection. Let's use a different one. Let's use this one. All right, let's go to folder and library. There we go. And now I'm in this folder. So this folder is, as I indicated earlier, where these images physically live. So this is the same folder that's on the operating system. This is where they physically live. And it's for storage, meaning think of a folder as this is where your images live on the hard drive. And outside of deleting images or doing file maintenance on your images, your organization should happen in collections. So here's the way to think about it. If I'm going to rename, move, delete, do that in a folder. Everything else should happen in a collection. And you can rename in a collection too, but I'm just saying file-specific operations, yes, do those in the folders. Everything else, do in a collection. Here's why. Because let's say I want images from different collections, different folders to be organized together. Well, if I do that in folders, then I'm physically changing the locations of those images. I'm having to move the images around. I don't want to do that. They're in the folders they're supposed to be in. But collections give me the freedom of working in a way that I can organize in any way I want, and I can put the same image in multiple collections, as many as I want. So the old analogy we've used for years is if you think of your music collection or iTunes or Apple Music, whatever you're using these days, Spotify, whatever it is, your music collection is all the CDs or music you've downloaded over the years, and those are in folders on your hard drive. But you don't always listen to the music by the artist, by the album, in order, so forth and so on. You usually make playlists. So that way you can listen to whichever song you want in whatever order you want by different artists whenever you want. And the same song can be in different playlists. You could have a holiday playlist. You could have a summer by the campfire playlist. You could have a evening dinner playlist, and you could have the same song, same jazz song in all three. But it's not taking up any space because it's in a playlist. Collections work the same way. So, for example, if I wanted to make a new collection called Spring 2022, and I want these 3 photos to be in it, then I can go to my collections. I can click create a collection. I can call that collection whatever I want, Spring 2022. I can put it inside of a collection set just so I'll be able to find it easier. So let's put it in a photography masterclass. And I can include the selected photos. I can even sync them to the cloud if I want, but I can include the selected photos. So now let's go ahead and create that. So there they are. The 3 photos are in this collection. They're still in the folder. It hasn't moved them. Just like your songs are still on your hard drive, you just added your songs to a playlist, didn't affect the songs at all. Same thing here. If I put them in a collection, it's easier for me to organize, and better yet, I can get photos now from other folders or collections for that matter, and put them in here as well. So if I go back to the folders and I go to, these are the folders. If I go to roses, for example, I took some rose shots, and I go back to my Spring 2022, which I'm also going to make a color so I can see it easier. Let's make that green for spring. All right, so now there's my Spring 2022, and I want to take this image. I'm just randomly picking images, this one, and this one. And I want to drag those into the Spring 2022. Again, it's not moving them. See, they're still in the same folder. But if I go to Spring 2022, they're in there as well. And I want this one to be first. And I want this one to be second. And I want this one to be third. And so forth and so on. Because maybe I'm going to print them that way. Maybe I'm going to make a slideshow that way. Maybe I'm going to do something that way, in that order. Oh, I changed my mind. I want this one to be here. So organizing them. They can be from different folders. They can be from different years. They can be from different locations, different cameras, different everything. It doesn't matter because your collection is for your organization. Is that Milani? Oh, this is better than Bridge, Sa. Yes, it is. That's why we don't, well, I shouldn't say we. Why I haven't used Bridge for this kind of stuff in decades. Okay, next up. So, stop using folders for organization. Folders are for where your images live. They're not for organizing. Because this organization can be used for anything and for as many images as you want and for any order you want, for any way you want to present your images. And like I said, if I want to now make a new collection, let's make one more collection, new collection, create a collection, and I just want to call it Flowers 2022. And I want to put in the same photography masterclass. I want to use that same one that was already selected. And now if I go back to spring, and I want to go here, and I want to take these 2, which weren't in Flowers, and put them in Flowers 2022, they're there as well. So they can be in multiple collections. And if you edit one, wherever it is, folder or collection, it's editing it everywhere. So for example, if I take this one into the develop module now, and I were to go ahead and make it a black and white for some reason, there it is, black and white. Was that a virtual? Oh, I had 2 selected. Okay, so let's undo that. I only want to do undo. I only want to do 1. I had 2 images. Oh, hang on, undo. I'm clicking. I only want to do 1 of these. All right, so that one's selected, develop, black and white, done. All right, so now I've changed that one. Well, is it changed also in Flowers 2022? Yeah, because it's the same photo. Is it changed if I go back and find it in the folder? Yeah, because it's the same photo. It doesn't make it a different photo just because you organize it. Just like the song, if you were to trim the song, if you were to edit the song, it's the same song in all the different playlists. So now it's going to be trimmed there. It's going to be shorter in all the playlists as well. So editing is editing to the photo. The photo can exist in multiple collections, and whatever changes you make to it will make it in all of those different collections. Now, someone brought this up earlier, so this is kind of a bonus tip. Where's the best place to create a catalog? Clifton, hang on a second. So someone brought this up a few minutes ago, and this is a bonus tip. So what if I want to make this one vertical, but I don't want to change the original? I want a horizontal one, and I want a vertical one as well. Well, that's what virtual copies are for. So everything I've shown you from an organization standpoint is in Lightroom Classic and Lightroom, except for Lightroom doesn't have folders of where your images are in the hard drive because they're in the cloud. It has folders of albums. So Classic is called Collection, Lightroom's called Albums. You can put images in different albums in Lightroom, different collections in Lightroom Classic. This one feature doesn't exist in Lightroom, and that's called a virtual copy. So if I were to use Lightroom Classic, which is what we're in, I have the option of going to Photo and creating virtual copy. Now, when I create that virtual copy, this is what the person brought up before. Well, I usually do that in the collection, which I just did. But if I were to now go to the folder where this is, go to Folder and Library, the virtual copy is right next to it there too, because the virtual copy is going to stay, it's going to hang out with the photo no matter where the photo is. And if it's in that folder, it's going to be in that folder as well. All right, so let's undo, go back. All right, so now here's my virtual copy. And if I were to go to my crop and I were to hit the letter X to make it vertical or just rotate it, and I were to recompose this shot, now I have a vertical image that is not changing the original. So I can make as many virtual copies as I want. So I can make another virtual copy. And that virtual copy can also be black and white. And if I were to select all three and export, I'm going to get 3 new images. One landscape, one vertical color, one vertical black and white, 3 new JPEGs, 3 new whatevers if I export them. But as long as they are in the catalog, those virtual copies don't take up any space on the hard drive. So these virtual copies only exist in the catalog. They don't exist on the hard drive. So back to Clifton's question, where's the best place to create your catalog? So by default, if you just install Lightroom Classic for the first time and you never, and you use the default catalog that it creates, you don't ever make your own, it's gonna put it by default in your user, so in my case, T White, my user folder on my hard drive, the one the operating system creates, in the pictures folder, and it's going to name it Lightroom Catalog or Lightroom something catalog. So there's nothing wrong with keeping it there or creating new ones there. Your pictures folder, in other words, it could be anywhere. I recommend keeping the catalog on the internal drive, and if you're out of space on your internal drive, put photos on external drives. The photos and the catalogs don't have to be in the same drive, but keep your catalog with you, meaning in other words, I'm working off a laptop, so I want the catalog to be with me at all times so it stays on the laptop hard drive. But I have 200,000 images in Lightroom Classic. Those 200,000 images would never fit on my hard drive on my laptop because they don't make a hard drive big enough for a laptop yet. So those are on an external storage unit here in my office. So that way I can always have the catalog and always see all 200,000 plus images, even though they don't all exist on that hard drive. Catalog with you, whatever folder you want on your internal hard drive. Images can be on the internal or external or both. Just depends on how you like to work. Okay, so number 2. Okay, number 2. That was using collections instead of doing things in folders. All right, number 3. Number 3 is realizing. It's really, I was going to talk about a specific tool, but it's realizing Lightroom's limitations. and when it's time to go to Photoshop. So for example, let's go to Photography Masterclass. Let's click on an image, or I'm sorry, a collection. I want to see. All right, I'm going to go here. All right, let me see about, oh, you know what? I got a better one. Let's go to removing. Let's go to removing distractions. That'll be a better one. Okay. This is perfect. All right, let's go here. If I go into this image and I want to clean up that license plate, I don't want the numbers to be shown, letters and numbers. To do it here in Lightroom, it can be done. So I could go to my spot healing tool and I can make my brush smaller and I can try and paint out that 2, for example. And it's going to pick the gray off the car, and that's not really the same gray, and I don't have enough room to do it here, and so I end up using that gray, and it works out okay. And then oops, I made a mistake. I clicked by mistake, and I go here and I try and do the 6 now, and now I've got more room, so maybe I try and bring it up here, and I kind of try and blend it in. In other words, yeah, you can do it, but it's going to take a lot of work to do intricate work like this, because this was always originally the spot healing or spot removal tool. In Photoshop, there's actually a spot healing brush that's 1,000,000 times better than this, because this tool was originally invented for removing sensor dust or spots in an image, not retouching. So like, if, for example, if you had a hair on your lens and it was in the same spot on 50 photos because it's on the lens, you could use that spot remove, select all 50 photos, use the spot removal tool, and it would remove it from all 50 photos. That's what it was originally designed for. It wasn't designed, and then they made it so it worked like a brush, like I just did. And some things you can definitely do while you're in Lightroom, quick, easy, get rid of it. But you got to realize your time and how good of a job it's going to do versus knowing when it's time to go to Photoshop. So bad habit number 3 is trying to use the Lightroom spot healing tool or spot removal tool when you should be using the Photoshop one. Now, there are absolutely times where this one, like for example, if I just needed to remove this port for the car jack, where the jack goes, I can click. It's going to remove it. Done. Do it here. This is the best place to do that. Quick, easy, non-destructive. But if I'm needing to do retouching, and I can already see that this isn't really, oh, hang on. This isn't really doing a good job. I'm leaving stuff. It's just not really doing a good job. Then that's when it's time to go to Photoshop. So let's undo, 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 undo. Put all that back. Let's get out of that tool. And let's Command E, which I see Photoshop launching on my other display. And I see the car over there now. Let's bring it over. And I could clone this out. I could, there we go. I could do several different ways of getting rid of this. I could do content aware fill. I could do clone. I could do patch. I could do spot healing brush. I could do a ton of different ways to do this. If I just wanted to get rid of the numbers off the license plate, that's the beauty of it, is that I have so many ways that'll work so much better that it's just easier to do it right here. I don't know if that, yeah, that's something. So for example, I could just paint that out, and it's not going to go look for it. I figured it would grab the X too. It's not going to go look for it in another spot. It's just going to go ahead and use the letters that are nearby, or I'm sorry, the space that's nearby. So it's grabbing the stuff from the X, and that's why I have to do it a few times. But if there's nothing next to it, once I clear space, then it's just going to be that much easier, because there won't be anything from the sides to grab. Now there's nothing from the side to grab. So for example, I could just grab my patch tool, Now they got some clean space to work with. And I could just take all of that and just patch it over. Done. And now take the 1, 2, 3 or 1, 3, 4 and patch it over. Done. So, and when I, by the way, if I were done with that, if I didn't need to do any more cleanup, I think I see one more spot. I don't know if that's on my, sorry, that's on my display. Once I save it, once I close it, once I go back to Lightroom, here's the original and the new one's right next to it. Oh, sorry, that's a different new one. Hang on. That was one where I really got rid of the whole thing. Here's the other one. Yeah, I was showing how to just get rid of it all, which, by the way, I would never attempt to do that in Lightroom. But anyway, just knowing when to go to Photoshop versus trying to do it all in Lightroom. That's the next bad habit. All right, next one. Photoshop has a different default color space than when you're working in Lightroom. So in Lightroom, it's under the hood Pro Photo RGB. So when you take things over to Photoshop to work on, the color could look different. And therefore, if you head over to Photoshop and the color looks different, then what you should do is make sure you change the color space to match. So I could go in here, I could go to convert to color profile or assign color profile. So convert to color profile, that will bring up this dialog box. And it already is in Pro Photo RGB. But if it weren't, make sure you put Photoshop in the same color space. So if you've ever like gone to do a retouch and you're like, the color doesn't look the same as it did in Lightroom, that's why. Because Lightroom's default color space is usually going to be different than what you're bringing over from Lightroom. So must you close Photoshop to have the image come back edited in Lightroom? Well, not close Photoshop, but you need to close the image. You need to save the image, I should say that. You don't have to close it, but you do need to save it. All right, and you could leave it open, but I'm not sure why you would do it that way. Anyway, so just bad habit number 3 or 4, whichever one this is, make sure that Photoshop is in the same Pro RGB color space if you want the colors to look the same while you're editing. All right, next bad habit. Not doing output sharpening. So when you are ready to export an image out, so let's say we're ready to export this car image out. I can export this several different ways, but let's go to regular old export. When you export, what people are usually, concentrating on is where it's going to go. If they want to rename it, which by the way, I believe it was Sandy. If you want to do your renaming, you can do it here. You don't have to wait till you get back the exported images out to rename them. You can rename them right here. Anyway, you're concerned about the format and the quality. So I want the quality to be higher. I want it to be sRGB. But what people, and then they usually just let it go. What people usually always forget or don't do as a bad habit is output sharpening. Now, what our output sharpening is for is, why do we do sharpening to begin with? Because in every step of the process of editing an image, from the time it comes off your camera to the time it's ready to be exported, meaning you brought it into your computer, you did things to it, now you're ready to put it back out to a different file format, already edited. You lose a little sharpening in each one of those steps. You lose something in capture sharpening. You lose something in export sharpening. Because you're basically converting the image each time. So when even if you bring in a raw file, that raw file lost a little bit of sharpening coming in from your camera as raw. Even raw, it's still going to lose a little sharpening. That's why, by default, when you bring in raw files, Lightroom sharpens them. When you go, if you just open up a raw file and you didn't touch it, when you go to sharpening, it's on 40 because it resharpened it because of that process. However, export does not do that by default. It's up to you. So when you output your images, whether you're going to print them or whether you're going to use output sharpening here, it's really important, if you want them to look as good as they possibly can, is to do output sharpening as well. So you can do output sharpening for screen. You can do output sharpening for different print, matte, or glossy paper. And then you can choose the amount of our output sharpening. Low means basically you won't see it. So just low means it's so minimal, you probably wouldn't even notice it. Standard's okay, and high is better. And it also, in this case for screen, it's really going to depend on the resolution. In other words, if you're making something really tiny, you can easily over sharpen it by doing this because it's going to be a really small file. So therefore applying a high amount of sharpening is going to be very visible. You might be overdoing it. But if you're putting a big high resolution image, then you can go to town on the sharpening and probably not see a big drastic difference, but you're going to see a difference that's worth doing. Okay, so whichever number that is, not doing output sharpening. This is another one of my pet peeves that people do. Not taking advantage of presets. And I mean presets throughout Lightroom. Whether it's Lightroom or Lightroom Classic, both versions have presets. And what's important for me with using presets is it saves me time. In other words, I don't have to manually drag all the sliders. I have to manually choose all the options in a dialog because I can just click a preset and it does it all for me. That's the whole point of a preset, is that you're doing the same things over and over and over again. Therefore, why have to do them manually over and over and over again? So this way, for example, if I were to go back to that collection, let's go back to the collection we were in earlier, the Masterclass collection, the spring 2022. Here we go. If I were to want to export this image out for Instagram, for example, well, what are the requirements for Instagram? Last time I checked, and it could be different now, but last time I checked, Instagram wanted an image that was 1080 pixels, 1080 pixels on the longest edge. Okay, it wants a JPEG, usually. And you probably want a high resolution JPEG because you're putting it on your Instagram, you want people to see your photography in a good light. You may or may not want a watermark. And like I said, you wanted a JPEG. Well, let's do that manually. File, export. All right, I want them to be on my desktop. Oh, hang on, desktop. I want them to be in a specific folder called for Instagram. Great. I don't want them renamed, but Sandy, you could rename them if you wanted to. And I do want them JPEG. I do want sRGB color space because that's what the world usually sees your photos in. So I do want that. I do want a higher quality. I do want them to be able to see them well. I do want them resized for the longest edge to be no bigger than 1080. And if it's smaller than 1080, don't res it up. And 72 pixels per inch. I do want to sharpen for the screen, standard amount. I do want to remove location info, because I don't want you to know where this photo was taken, especially if it was taken in my house. And I can leave the person info if I've tagged the person, that's fine. And I honestly don't want all of that metadata. I don't want you to know my camera serial number and all that, so just use copyright and contact info. Actually, let's just make it simple. And I could or could not include a watermark. Let's include it just for fun. And I have my own watermark here. Let's do that one. All right, and then when you're done, show me in the Finder. Now, if I hit export, it's going to do that. It's going to just do that, all of the things we said, and I will have one image exported with, that's 1080, that's JPEG, that's so forth and so on, with my watermark on it. But then I'm going to have to remember all those things the next time I come back to this to do it again. But before I hit export, if I were to come over here and click Add, because I'm in the preset dialog box, click Add, and I could make this one Masterclass Instagram, just so I know which one it is. And I click Create. Now I've created a preset for this that's going to be right there, that now every time I want to do this, all of these settings will be in place. So now when I hit Export, that one photo's been exported. There it is with my watermark on the bottom left-hand corner. It's only 1080 pixels wide. It's the original file name. It's a JPEG. It's sRGB, and it's been sharpened a little for screen output. Okay, great. Now let's say I want to do these two. So now, instead of me having to manually go do that again, I would just choose export. And I would just go click for Instagram versus for YouTube, which is different settings. But for Masterclass Instagram, export, done. So now that I've created that preset, I can export as many photos as I want with those settings every day. So every time I need images for Instagram, I've got a preset ready to go. So you've got presets for importing. I always want my images imported and applied a develop module preset. I've got presets for develop module. I've got presets for exporting. I've got presets for printing. I've got presets for every step of the editing and managing process. So not taking advantage of presets means you're doing a lot of things manually over and over and over and over again. Take advantage of presets. Okay, next one. And I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to get to this one now. Not renaming your images. In other words, let's go back to, I want to go back to where this image exists. Go to collection, this one actually. Go to collection, there it is, that's where we were. All right, we touched upon this, but we didn't really talk about it as a bad habit. We talked about it from a bad habit of not doing things behind Lightroom's back, but we didn't talk about it from a bad habit of even if you don't do things behind Lightroom's back, you should still be doing this. And I just briefly mentioned it. This file name, APC, whatever it is, came from the camera. So yours could be your initials. It could be DNC. It could be whatever your camera outputs as a file name. What does that mean to you? Are you going to be able to search for that? You're going to be looking one day for your, you know what? I need that APC 408. I need to search for that. No, because these names and these letters and numbers mean nothing to you. Unless you're an engineer. If you're an engineer, you probably got some system where you need this. But for the rest of us, these letters and numbers mean nothing to you. So why are you using them for your system? Your camera has to name them something. So it does. It uses letters and numbers. But once it's named them just so they're different, you don't have to live with that name. So this is a Lightroom Classic feature. Lightroom, you do live with that name, but you really don't ever use it. So in Lightroom Classic, once you import your images and you've culled them down and you've gotten rid of all your bad ones, rename your keepers. So that way they'll mean something to you. So for example, let's go ahead and just select all these that are different bad names. These. Got all the other ones. And now let's rename them. So library, rename photos. And you can rename lots of different ways. You can use any system for renaming you want. You can even keep the original file name if that means something to you. I don't know why you would, but you could. So I'm going to do a custom name. And I've got actually custom settings. So let me show you what my custom settings are. My custom settings are use custom text, whatever text I put in, and a sequence of 4 digits. Why do I use a sequence of 4 digits? Instead of calling it cloudy day 1, why do I call it cloudy day 0001? Because if I'm ever doing a search for cloudy day 1, that could bring up cloudy day 1, cloudy day 10, cloudy day 100, cloudy day 101. It'll bring up all the ones that have a 1 in it. So if I use a 4-digit extension, I'm never usually shooting over 9,999 images in a shoot. So that's safe for me. And that way, every image is going to have a unique name that I could search for. All right, so let's, I don't use that as much as I used to, but I do still want it that way. All right, so now we can name these cloudy day. We already did number 2. Let's do number 3. And then we'll start with actually, I think we used 3 as well. Let's start with number 4. We'll start with number 4 and go forward. So if I click OK, done. It's renamed all 9 of these or 5 of these. 6 of these. So renamed all 6 of these, and it could have been 660, 600, 6,000, 60,000. It could be as many as you select, get renamed that quickly. And yes, they got renamed in the operating system. Okay, so renaming your images means that you will now, you can make an elaborate name if you want. Paris, summer 2022, the Louvre, whatever. And that could be the name of the file. Because if you search for any one of those as a text search, your images are going to come up no matter what collections they're in, what folders they're in, where if you can't remember how you organize them, if you can just remember what you called it, part of the name of what you called it, it's going to be that much easier to find. All right. So it's more for organization and searching than it is for just looking at the names. I see someone says, I never actually look at the file names. Yeah, I don't look at them on purpose, but if I'm ever searching for something, it's going to be a lot easier for me to find Cloudy Day than it is APC 408, because I'm never going to remember what APC 408 was, but I could remember Cloudy Day. Even if I don't remember what it was for or where it was. All right. All right. Here's another one. So remember when I went behind Lightroom's back and I removed something, I renamed the image, and it gave me that exclamation point, meaning I couldn't do anything with it from that point? Well, if you had built a smart preview, even if an image is missing, you still be able to work with it. So not building smart previews is another bad habit. You can build smart previews upon import. It's one of the checkboxes in your import dialog box, but you can also build them after the fact. So if I select all of these images, now I don't need the virtual copies, just the images. If I select all these images and I go to previews under libraries and I build, let me uncheck one. I just want to uncheck one to show you what would happen. Let's uncheck that one. All right, library. Build smart previews. Okay. It's pretty quick. It happened. And now that it's happened, you notice over here on the right-hand side, it says I have the original and I have the smart preview. Now let's go take that last one that I didn't build the smart preview for. It just says original. It doesn't say smart preview. And let's go in the operating system and mess it up. Show in Finder. And we're going to call it Cloudy Day number 999. So I just add a 9 to the name, which means that's not the same one that Lightroom knows about. So now I come back with an exclamation point. But if I were to go do that same thing to number 8, show in Finder, and I make this one 88 instead of 8, which Lightroom doesn't know about 88, it doesn't give me an exclamation point. It gives me a little square because I have a smart preview. It doesn't know where the original is because maybe the drive's disconnected. Maybe I just don't have that drive plugged in, but I'd still be able to work on the file. This one, if I try and go into the develop module and I try to develop, it lets me. Do I have a smart preview of that one? Photo is missing, but it normally would not let me develop because the photo's missing. I don't know why it's letting me do it here. But normally you're going to get an error saying you can't develop the image because it's missing. But the one for the smart preview, you can go in and do whatever you want because you're editing the smart preview, and once the original is reconnected, it will apply to the original. Okay, I don't know where we are in terms of numbers, but I'm going to say this is going to be the last one. We did output sharpening. Renaming, we did that. Good, good, good. I think this is the last one. All right, so let's say we want to go in and we want to take one of the originals and we want to print it. We don't want to print it with that template though. Let's use, see, Lightroom printing has templates as well. We just want to use a 5x7 template. Okay, if you go in and instead of printing to a printer, because I don't own a photo printer anymore, I always print to a service. If I print to an online service, I want to export out a JPEG so that it will let me upload it to be printed. Well, and I could just go file, export JPEG, but this will let me print it as a JPEG with the template, all the stuff I've done here as well. What people do here is type in a resolution. It's irrelevant. Don't type in a resolution. You don't, like, people get all caught up. Should it be 200 PPI? Should it be 300? It doesn't matter. Stop doing that. So, bad habit, worrying about file resolution for printing. Don't worry about typing in a number. It's going to output out the highest quality based on all the other settings, the print sharpening, the JPEG quality. This is what matters, not this number. So stop stressing over the output number. It's irrelevant for what you're trying to do, printing to a file. So that is, I believe, the 10th one. If I missed one, use the bonus tip instead. All right, I am out of time. That's why I'm wrapping up. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me on another Friday masterclass. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully that these bad habits are not something that you will continue to do if you were doing them and maybe you just didn't know any better, but now you do. And hopefully you learned something from today. So with that said, cheers everybody. Stay tuned for the Daily Creative Challenge and we will catch you on the next one. Bye everybody.